Welcome to Be Inspired Live. I'm Christy Pennison, licensed professional counselor, and I'm joined by Elizabeth Beebe, who is a licensed professional counselor as well. And so I was just curious, have you ever thought or wondered, like, is my child or teen depressed? If you've thought that as a parent or even as a family friend or mentor, then today what we're talking about is something you're going to want to listen to. And so I'm joined by Elizabeth Beebe. I
Uh,
always go the wrong way on this, who is a counselor here at Be Inspired Counseling and Consulting. And we're just going to dive into this topic today about is my child depressed or someone I know depressed and ways to spot it in children and teens, because it is a little bit different than things that we may see in adults. So,
right.
Elizabeth, let's talk about this. Why is this an important thing for us to be talking about today?
Well, there's been a significant increase in kids and adolescents aged 3 to 17 in depression over the past few years. And when you look at the data, which I got from the CDC website, it only goes up to 2019. So already until
Yeah.
20, we had an increase.
And we know what happened in
Right,
2020, right? A pandemic.
exactly. And so that then even just from what we've seen, has increased the amount of kids and adolescents coming in presenting with symptoms of depression. Um, and I think one of the numbers said about 2.7 million children in
Wow.
that will suffer from depression. And that's just what we know has been diagnosed.
Right.
That's don't know about.
That's not all the teens we're talking
Right.
about that you don't know about or children that you don't know about.
Hmm.
Well, and as you're sharing those statistics, one of the things that comes to my mind even more readily is the fact that not that depression leads to suicide, but the suicide rates among the children and teens
Right.
is super high. And
Hmm.
not, and like I said, we don't want to draw the correlation that depression means that, you know, somebody is suicidal, because that can often be two different things.
Hmm.
But we do see sometimes where if there's a history of untreated depression, then it can lead to suicidal thought processes, fleeting suicidal thoughts. And with suicide being, I think it's the second leading cause of death for, I want to say 9 to 14, maybe even higher than that. It's pretty up there. I had the statistics at one point and I don't have them right now, but it's the second leading cause of death for like a big age range until like early 20s,
Right.
essentially. Um, and if we look at that, and then we also look at these statistics that say depression is on the rise, it
Hmm.
is something that we really need to look at and understand a little bit about what may be driving that, and then what can we do. So, Elizabeth, do you have any insight on what is, in your opinion, driving the increase, or at least what you found in your research to be driving this increase in depression?
Well, the biggest thing that I've kind of found in research, but also kind of recognized just in my own practice with clients, is that if a child has experienced an adverse event,
Hmm.
whether it be actual trauma, abuse, neglect, um, sexual trauma in their past, or even loss of a family member, either to death or separation of the family, divorce. Um, if that child has any struggles with social interactions, bullying in school, living in high poverty or high crime areas, also increases the incidence of depression. And also, I mean, the recent pandemic, a family that may have a family member in it who has a severe medical or physical illness, or even
Hmm.
that person, that child themselves struggles with some medical conditions, then we're looking at definitely an increased risk of depression.
Yeah. Well, and another variable I think of that, maybe because I'm reading a book about it right now,
Mm-hmm.
and we love technology. Okay. So I'm
Yeah.
about to throw this out there, but, and I'm not saying that this is like correlated. I have not done any research, but what I have seen in my own, like you said, practice of working with teenagers and children is also the emergence of technology.
Mm-hmm.
And with that comes great things, but it also comes some negative things. So, like you said, the propensity for online bullying is more.
Mm-hmm.
The feeling of isolation,
Right.
like I'm seeing all these people do these things, but that's not me, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing this version of what life is portrayed as, but I'm not experiencing that, or just I've just seen it. Whereas like the whole communication, if somebody doesn't respond to me in a certain amount of time, then I feel like I'm being rejected, which then can lead to thoughts of maybe I'm not good enough, which then can
Mm-hmm.
lead to thoughts of, you know, a lot lead to feelings of, I'm not feeling great. I feel depressed. I feel sad. I feel disappointed, whatever it may be. And I
Right.
think that also contributes to the fact that, we may be seeing some of these, and I don't know if they've done research to link this together, but,
Yeah.
I think about kids even playing out in communities, right? Like that has significantly decreased, in my opinion, as technology has
Yeah.
increased.
Well, and that's definitely the case. And, I don't know that they've really sat down and put numbers to it, but, just from practice, we hear about, all of this stuff from kids that they experience. And the thing with technology and social media in particular is it never stops. There's this constant interaction. So you don't just go to school and get bullied, you go home and get bullied there as well. So
Yeah.
there's no safe place anymore where this negative information isn't constantly being kind of shoved in these kids' faces.
Yeah, you don't get a break from it. And then you don't even get a break to process it, right? Because you're always in it. I think about growing up, and I used to never think that I was going to get to this place where it's like, back in my day, but back in my day, when I was growing up, right? I mean, there was a gap. If
Yeah.
if I didn't, if I was not, and I remember middle school was real rough for me. So if I
Hmm.
was being picked on at middle school, I could go home and I would be doing other things that
Right.
not linked to any technology, because at that point I think maybe dial-up internet was a thing, but I'm pretty sure we didn't have it. Um,
No.
and so, you were able to do things like read or go outside, or I really didn't live close to other kids. So I think I did a lot of reading at that age, or
Yeah.
writing, or activities with other people. It wasn't that I was glued to a screen trying
Hmm.
to see if somebody's going to validate my worth by a like, or if it's going to be that somebody is going to say something negatively to me. And I know me and you both talk to teenagers,
Hmm.
and I will say that from what I hear, because they teach me a lot, is that there is not a lot of nice stuff going on. It's
No.
not typically, and maybe it's because we are working with teens that are struggling, right? But like, it's not normally the validating, empowering, you're
Not.
amazing, keep doing the great things. No, that's
No.
not what's going on.
No, it's not. And not even just with clients. I mean, I can think about family members
Mhm.
and, nieces and nephews and my own kids who
Yeah.
their their relationship with social media is just not good. And therefore there's this constant engagement with other people. Again, that's usually not positive.
Right.
And so there's this constant lack of balance that goes on.
Yeah.
And what happens in one place doesn't just stay in that place, it's with them everywhere.
Yeah. Well, that might bring us to the next question. And that's kind of like, well, how do you know if your child, teen, or a child or teen that you know
Mhm.
is maybe depressed?
Well, and that's something that can be really difficult with kids and teenagers because they don't always express everything to us verbally. They might not know how to express what they're feeling in a way that we can understand. So a lot of times we have to look for things. We have to watch for, you know, if our child appears to be feeling more sad or irritable. And especially for kids, it might not be just this sad kid who stays in their room all the time. It's this kid who gets, frustrated and angry
Yes.
and is constantly lashing out and things like that. So it may not look like sadness, it may look like anger. And so we have to keep that in mind when we think about depression also, that
Mhm.
it's not just sadness, and how it expresses itself is not just being sad.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we all go
Well,
ahead.
and I was just going to comment on that. I mean, I really do see, especially in children,
Mhm.
teens is a little bit different, but you can see irritability a lot there too. A lot of just quick response, super irritable, a little bit more than normal teenage, because
Right.
there is like, teenagers equals some level of irritability with the world, right, in
Yes.
themselves. But I would say that the behaviors, I think, really for children, if you see a child whose behavior has shifted a lot, there
Hmm.
is a lot of what most people would deem, and I hate to use the word positive or negative, right? But like negative behaviors, which is drawing attention to them and they're getting in trouble. Or they're just really reactive. I could even think of someone in my own life, a child, really reactive and just not normally themselves. Then I guess what you're saying is that can be a sign of depression,
Yes.
possibly. Yeah.
Sometimes we confuse that with a behavior problem
Yeah.
rather than mood disorder. And
Right.
so we think, oh, we've got to fix this behavior. This is a bad kid, when in reality, this is a kid that's going through a lot of things emotionally.
Yes. Yes. Well, tell me a little bit about kind of what are some signs and symptoms. I know we've started talking about this, but like
Right.
really for children and teens.
So if you notice that your child's no longer wanting to do things that they've enjoyed before, maybe they were really active and engaged in clubs or certain sports, and all of a sudden they don't want to anymore. Maybe they can't even explain why they don't want to, but they stop doing those things. Maybe they stop spending time with their friends. Also, if their eating patterns change, either they're eating more or eating less, if they're sleeping more or sleeping less, and it's just a change from what you've noticed has been normal. Energy level is also another one. So if they're getting tired all the time, if they're not wanting to do things, they're staying in their room in bed, or just sometimes just not even having the energy to go out and do things that maybe they say they want to do. But when it comes time to do it, they're like, no, I can't today. Maybe they're having difficulty paying attention in school. Sometimes their grades might start suffering because of this. Um, they just get distracted or they can't focus. Um, Also, if they're expressing low self esteem, like making a lot of negative statements about themselves, um, and that may come out as anger too, like I'm just never good enough, or anytime they get into trouble, um, I'm just such a horrible person, or things like that. Maybe they are engaging in some things that are a little more significant, like self injury, cutting, burning. Um, this can even be like, especially for boys, fighting more often, a lot more aggressive type behaviors. Um, Also, substance abuse is a big one.
Mm.
Think about from what I read, 4% of teens who suffer from depression also have substance abuse problems. And so maybe they're, drinking, maybe they're smoking marijuana or um, vaping, just any kind of substance. They are more likely. So if you do notice that starting, then maybe depression could be a cause behind that. Um, and definitely any type of suicidal thinking or making attempts, or even not even necessarily suicidal thoughts, but just making comments about I don't want to be here anymore.
I don't want to be here anymore. Or maybe it would be better if
I was never born.
I was never born. Or people wouldn't miss me if I was gone, you know?
Mhm. Right.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we'll see these things or we'll hear this stuff, and maybe it's like once and they seem okay after that, or we don't see it enough that we think it's a problem. But if these things are happening, it probably wouldn't hurt to at least get it evaluated, at least in some way, even if they're not going to talk to you.
Yeah. And I think this is where sometimes I think parents or just people in a child's life are uncertain of how to start the conversation of how are you feeling. And the reality is that it doesn't mean that children or teens are always going to be super forthcoming about how they're feeling either. They may not know how to communicate
Mhm.
or articulate what's going on. They just know that they may not feel themselves. But when you have a child who's really angry and
Mhm.
irritable towards you as a parent, it's hard to go in there and be like, oh, is something wrong, right? You're just thinking of, oh man, they're being disrespectful to me, or they're not listening to what I'm asking them to do. And so just taking a time to ask your child or teen, and I know we're probably about to get there, but like, hey, what is going on? But if they don't
Right.
want to tell you, what I'm hearing you say is it may be a good idea to just get some help.
Right. So, and sometimes that's as simple as maybe going to their primary care doctor. Almost all pediatricians now will give a depression scale.
Mm-hmm.
That will at least give you some idea of, is this something I need to be concerned about?
Yeah.
Or talking with the school. What are their teachers seeing? Especially if school seems to be being affected, or their friendships, or you're noticing just some changes there. Talk to their teachers,
Yeah.
school counselor to talk to them, even if it's, it's helpful to have as many people as possible. And
Yes.
whenever you're concerned that this may be something your child is struggling with.
Well, and I think this is a great point to mention too, because I know me and you both have teenagers,
Hmm.
right? And sometimes they're not you just when you from a systematic perspective, when a child enters teenage years, their most influential part of their life is their peers,
Right.
right? And whereas you used to be their influential part of their life, now not so much.
No.
And oftentimes, you could be an amazing parent, but they just may not talk to you about this, and this is
Right.
okay. But this is where you get help and get support. And you mentioned one thing is, a lot of times when, and I know we're talking about children too,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of times most schools have school counselors within them.
Yeah.
Now, it is often sometimes they may not be able to always see your child on a regular basis, but it may be good enough just to tell them, hey, look, can you just check in on my child? I'm
Right.
concerned about, their well-being, and I just want an outside perspective to talk with them and then let me know as a parent. I don't need to know what they're saying, but I need to know as a parent if I need to take
Yeah.
additional steps to get my child the help that they need. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, especially in our community, I mean, I just have to say it, it's just very unfortunate. And unfortunate is not even a good word. I don't even know the word, tragic, whatever you want to say, but we have had children and teens commit suicide in our area, probably more than is representative of what that should, normally looks like. And
Right.
so I think that the reason why we're having this discussion anyways is that not that we can always prevent things from happening, but the more that we can be the eyes and ears that notice things, and
Right.
and when we notice those things, actually take some action steps towards them. Because I think about it, if your child's sick out with something, like, it's normally not a second thought to like take them to the doctor, right? But because we're not always certain as parents about what things could be signs of
Right.
depression, which is why we're talking about it today. But you can have the same response, like, because I can promise you, if your child to, like, whether it be your PCP, whether it be the school counselor, whether you take them to a counseling agency, if they don't feel that they're really depressed, they're going to tell you,
Yes.
right? But if they are concerned that your child is struggling with depression, they will point you in the direction of what should be the next steps for your child.
Definitely.
So I guess, when do you feel like it's appropriate, Elizabeth, for someone to say, okay, well, now it's time. Maybe I've talked with my PCP, maybe I've talked with the school counselor, and they're concerned to take them to, like us, therapists, counselors, right? Like, when do you feel like that's the step that should be taken?
I mean, definitely if you do talk to your doctor or the school and they're recommending it, but also even if you just have this feeling that things aren't okay.
Yeah.
We can come in, we can do an assessment, and we can talk to them, talk to you, get some information, maybe have a few sessions scheduled, and then really get a good idea of, is this something that does need to be looked at deeper, whether it needs to be addressed? Is this just typical teenage situational kind of stuff?
And
Or
that's so hard to distinguish. Is this
yes,
like typical, teenage transition into adulthood, identity development, and what is actually something that really could require some extra help?
well, and really, I mean, even if it's not quite to the point where it's depression, even if they're just struggling some with navigating those things, it never hurts for them to have someone who is not a parent, someone who's not involved in their daily life, that they can go to and feel comfortable talking about all this stuff, problem solving, maybe even working on some of those negative thoughts or relationships that just might not be healthy or helpful for them. And, maybe keeping it from getting to the point where it does get more severe.
Yes.
Counseling, even in that case, I would suggest is not necessarily a bad thing.
No. And it can be really helpful. I mean, I know you've worked with a lot of children and teens. I've worked with a lot of children and teens. And I can't say enough how sometimes having that neutral party for your child or teen
Definitely.
really allows them to learn different skills of how to cope with some of these challenging emotions that come with growing up, but also get a different perspective on the things that they are facing, because that alternate perspective really can be a difference maker in how they view themselves, the world, and then also ultimately how they feel. And that's what I mean. I haven't met one parent that says, I really want my child to feel miserable. It's kind of extreme, but we all want our children to be happy and healthy and to be able to live life fully. And when they are struggling, it is often we can feel helpless as parents, or as family members in knowing how to help. And so I always say, if you don't know how to help, that's okay. I don't even know how to help my own child on some days. And and it's crazy. I'm like, I have worked with this teenagers for years. I should know this. But when it's your own child, it's different. It's
It
different.
is.
So it's okay to ask for help.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Beebe, I know we're coming to, and I'm sorry, I call her Beebe sometimes, Elizabeth. Um, Elizabeth, tell people a little bit about if they are looking for help, right? A little bit about who you serve and help here at Be Inspired Counseling and Consulting, and who you work with, and kind of how that process is.
So for me, I have worked with younger children in the past. Right now, I typically see kids about age 9 to 10 up, and usually just to help those kids navigate if there is depression, if there's anxiety, um, or if these symptoms are occurring because of situations that they've experienced in their lives, like loss or trauma. Also, kids who may be experiencing bullying, and kind of helping them with them and their parents, honestly, kind of with how to manage those symptoms, some coping skills to help with how to deal with difficult situations and relationships, and also just even working on the relationship between maybe the parents and the kids who may need some help just with knowing how to communicate, how to talk to each other. How,
Yeah.
just even if it's just being able to get that child where they can say, "Mom or Dad, I'm not okay."
Yeah.
And feeling comfortable doing that so that then the parent can do what they need to do to
Yeah.
get the help that they need. And so we do that through a lot of different ways. Maybe there's, different therapies that we might use depending on the client or the child, but all of it is for the purpose of helping that child
Yeah.
deal with whatever they may be experiencing.
Yeah. And we were just talking about earlier about how growing up is so different than what it used to be. And although there's still similar things that children and teens go through, that is just normal development throughout, aging and lifespan and things like that. I do think that if they can learn at this age too how to navigate those
Yeah.
emotions that nobody really teaches us how to do unless we learn through what is modeled to us, man, it can be such a game changer. And I'm, as you're talking about this, and I know we got to wrap up, but I'm even thinking about some of the teens that I've worked with that I'm like, you know what? I wish I would have learned some of the things that we're talking about right
Right.
now, because I would have maybe been able to navigate the challenges that will come. It's not,
Mhm.
are they going to come, right? Like, we're all going to go through challenges in life. And if a child or teen can learn at that age to really recognize whether it be negative thought patterns, challenging
Mhm.
emotions, and skills to move through that. And then parents can learn also the skills, because I mean,
Right.
sometimes we're not given manuals or taught all the ways to support your children through
Mm.
challenging emotions or depression. And if you are able to learn how to help and support your child through that, it can be a really life changer for not only you, but your family. So, yeah. So on that note, thank you, Elizabeth, for joining me today to talk about this very important topic. If you would like to schedule an appointment with Elizabeth, or if you just want to find out more about what we do here at Be Inspired Counseling and Consulting, please feel free to check us out on our website at beinspiredcc.com. Also, feel free to reach out to us at the phone number listed above, 318-266-7021, and ask us any questions. If we're not the help you need, we want to make sure and point you into the direction of the help that can be most helpful for you. And then if you feel like what we talked about today, a parent, or a adult in some child's life that needs to kind of have some of this information that we've talked about, please feel free to share this so that way they can receive this information as well. But we'll be coming live again soon, so we hope to see you in the future. But until then, we hope you have a great rest of the day and rest of the week.
Bye.